Welcome to Judicial Dollars and Cents, brought to you by Anders Virtual CFO Services team from all across the United States. I'm John Scott, and in each episode, we'll shine a light on the financial side of the legal world. We sit down with law firm innovators who are shaping the future of the profession. Let's dive in, right here on Judicial Dollars and Cents. Welcome to today's episode of Judicial Dollars and Cents. This is the podcast where we dive into the business side of running a law firm. I'm John Scott. I'm here with my colleague, Cagney Furbert, who is a Anders Virtual CFO Services CFO for law firms. In each episode, we sit down with experts like today's expert, Kevin Daisey. And Kevin is the founder of Array Digital, a results-driven digital marketing agency that helps firms dominate their local markets. Cagney, welcome. Kevin, welcome to today's episode.
Thanks, John. Happy to see you, Kevin.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Hey, Kevin. So you've been in this business a while and you are wildly successful at helping law firms. I'm always interested in someone's origin story. What did you start out doing? And let me set the table here because I have 4 children that went to college for different things, but none of them are doing those things that they studied in college. I'm wondering if you have a similar story and background, and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I appreciate that. So similar, I guess. I went from a small town, an island actually, off the coast of Virginia. Very small school. Not many folks going to big schools and things like that coming out of there. But wasn't really sure what I wanted to do out of high school. I knew I liked to design things and make things, and so I kind of took a last minute approach to go to a trade school to do like architecture. So it was more of a AutoCAD kind of trade school versus a top tier school. And so I learned AutoCAD drafting and went into work for a civil engineering firm out of school. And meanwhile, in the background, I made websites just for fun. This is early 2000s. So, small websites for my own creative purposes or hobbies. And long story short, working in a cubicle every day, kind of banging out, hours at this engineering firm. I met a group of entrepreneurs, and they kind of asked me to come join them at a technology kind of group, and just kind of discovered, what business owners were and entrepreneurs, what that word meant. And when they asked me what I did, I didn't say what I did. I just said I design websites. So that piqued everyone's interest, and kind of got some side work going, and that was it. I quit my job within that same year, and started my own business in 2006 at age 23. And here we are.
Here we are, helping law firms and other business owners dominate in a digital world. So I kind of smile when you said you had this engineering background. I realize you're not a trained engineer, but engineers prove everything by math. And I had this one client years ago he had a 3-digit employee number with McDonnell Douglas, which of course is now Boeing. So he was an engineer from way back when in the aerospace industry. And they prove everything with math, and I would have to get him his tax return 2 weeks in advance because he would go through, and it was 2 inches thick. He would go through every page, every line, and he'd call me. He was from Mississippi. John, I can't figure out where you got that number on page 45, line 32. And I'm like, Jack, it's laser printed in the computer software. Hang on, I'll get back to you in a couple of days. So I now refer those engineering math provers to my partners that mix better with those folks. But tell us about digital marketing and how it resonates, and give me the impact of AI and ChatGPT and how that is changing those algorithms.
Yeah, 100%. I guess to my story too, I eventually found my passion working with lawyers and law firms. Some of my first clients were law firms and lawyers, and still have some of those from early 2000s today that we do digital marketing, SEO, AI search for. So, my passion is really business and understanding business and how it operates and works. Marketing happens to be, how we help our law firm business owners succeed. But it really comes down to the numbers and the math. And like you're saying too, is, just driving traffic or people to your website or social media views, what's the impact of the bottom line of the business comes down to a lot of other factors, right? And understanding what's impacting that. And then today, with Google still being the majority of the way people find you in search, now you have ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, and these other platforms. Definitely shaking up the market. It's definitely making changes to how we do things. Same principles apply, right? You're asking for help online through a search or chat. You're looking for an answer, a recommendation if you don't have a referral. If someone's going to find a CPA or a CFO, you're probably going to go to some colleagues, some trusted folks in an inner circle. Or you might, if you don't have that, you go online, right? So it's definitely changing the game, but I would say it's following the same principles. Your law firm has to have a strong brand. It has to have good messaging. It has to have good results, improving results with reviews, testimonials, and things like that. So more important than ever now is the firm's brand. It's, I guess, what's the best word? It's track record. It's, how do you show up in the market? If it's bad service or, you're slow to answer the phone or return someone's message, it's going to be found out and you're going to lose. So it's more and more things have to be really looked at and tightened down to perform in these markets.
So you can put all the leads into the top of that funnel, but if you don't nurture it along the way and have good processes, it's all for naught.
Yeah. And that's why, I come back to business operations and how a business is run and how financially off it is, and that they have their numbers and they have processes. Like, I talk about that more than everything else, because all the law firm owners want, well, what's the secret today to get more leads? And how do I hack the system or get ChatGPT to recognize or to recommend me? If you're not built on all those systems and processes and good business practices, then it's not going to matter if you get those leads, because you will do a poor job at some point to maximize those leads. So, that's what my podcast is mostly about, is, all the things other than marketing that are important that I try to preach is, you should always be marketing. Everything's your marketing, your people, your culture. When someone answers the phone, if, Cadney answers the phone, right, how she represents you and your firm, that is your culture, your marketing, that's everything. So it just goes deep. It's a lot of things to think about, but don't take shortcuts, right? You got to focus on all these things.
So if I were a great prospect for you, what would I look like, and what would be the process of beginning my journey? Let's say I'm at a PA firm now. I want to go out and start my own firm. I've got a buddy who I want to partner with. Take me through the process of how we would start to build that brand, build content, and get our message out there to start getting the phone ringing.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and I come across these folks all the time, looking to start, usually a partner, usually leaving a firm. They've probably done well, so they have some budget there. So, I think first off, assessing where you're at. If you have a lot of referrals, you have some budget there to work with. Can you hire someone like us or a professional firm, or is it something that you need to kind of cobble together yourself? Regardless of the answer, the things that you need to take serious and think about is, what are your values? So as a partnership, or you and your two partners, let's assume you and Cadney are the only two that exist for the firm. Get together. What are your values? What would you like to see the firm be and become? And as you hire somebody, what values do they need to have to align with where you're going? I think doing that exercise, something that I didn't do for many years because I thought it was just a bunch of fluff, is been the most important thing that we've probably done. You hire and fire by those, and that guarantees you more or less a good culture, team that can really take you to the next level. You're not going to get anywhere by being a hard ass or running something that's no one wants to be part of. So I think that's the most important thing. And then from there, what's your ideal client? And, as a law firm, say you're a divorce attorney, right? Do you want pro bono work because you want to just do good for folks, or do you high end, multi-generational, divorce type clients? So it's, who do you really want to work for, and what kind of clients do you want to serve? Make that as niche as possible, and then work on your messaging to say, if someone were to find me online or social media or whatever, does the message I put out resonate with them and attract them towards our firm? Then once you kind of have all those things in place, you can begin to market yourself and drive more folks, more eyeballs, if you will, right?
Totally agree. And I love your focus and Array's focus on data. And we do the same thing with finance, because we don't want to be the historical CFO that looks backwards to tell you what happened. We want to tell you, hey, what are your goals and desires? How are we going to get there? And what levers, what data points do we need to pay attention to get you to your destination, and so you can achieve or exceed your goals? And to that end, we have developed a profit-focused maturity model that focuses on 5 areas of the finance function, and we let the client self-grade themselves. We have some input as to how that goes, and Cagney is really good at going through these PFMAs with clients. But what it does is it points out that, hey, maybe in 2 of the 5 areas they're rocking it, but in 3 areas they need to improve. So we spend the next 6 to 12 months working on incremental improvement on those areas. And the ultimate goal is, for any business, is an exit, right? Whether it's passing it on to people in your firm, selling to another firm, or merging. So if your finance function, if your marketing function, if all those non-legal things are performing at a high level, you're going to get a premium for what you're passing on. And so that's the goal. And then switching topics a little bit, law firm advertising. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to this. I love the TV and radio ads, digital ads too, or the SEO ads as well. But when Morgan & Morgan comes to town, it changes the game for everybody. Can you talk about how people have to step up? They're never going to compete with Morgan & Morgan, but they have to do something different to set themselves aside.
100%. That's a great topic. And then, back to just you guys real quick, having someone that's looking ahead, planning, projecting, super important. I don't know how many CPAs we've fired in recent years that are just not proactive and giving us that data. So it's very important to have that. So Morgan & Morgan comes to town, and you're in PI, and what do? Do you roll over and die, give up? No. So, there's certain folks that comes back to brand and your positioning. And so if this is your situation, and it's going to be your situation probably, because they are the largest firm in the country and they're only getting bigger. So, one of the things you want to do is you want to play offense, right? You don't want to be on defense. You want to look at your positioning, your niche, like I mentioned, because if your niche is, one-on-one with attorneys and service, working with car accident victims, Morgan & Morgan is the big one. So they might win people that go, I want the biggest law firm, right? Because I've seen their stuff. But that's not your position, right? Your position is not to do that. So are you the boutique firm? Is it a special area that you help? Maybe you specialize in truck accidents or slip and falls. What is your niche that you're going after, and how do you speak to those folks? Also, if you're local and you don't plan to really expand past your market, lean heavily into that. Morgan & Morgan is not local. They're just hiring folks maybe that are local, but they're not a born firm in your area. So you really have to identify, okay, who's Morgan & Morgan? Where can't I compete? What makes us actually different? Like, what are 3 unique things that make you different than every firm on the block? You're not just going against Morgan & Morgan. You're going against all the firms that are in your market.
Right.
really take time to step back and reflect on that and say, okay, why are we different? What resonates with folks in our market? If you're from that market, you should know. Speak to your clients, speak to your past clients, speak to your current clients. Hey, why did you choose to sign up with us? Why did you choose not to sign up with us? And start to find out what that information is and use that to your advantage. You can still compete.
I love that point about finding out why they reached out, why they engaged. That's great data that helps you then focus on the next new client, because clearly what you did worked with the client that just hired you. So do more of that. I'm a big believer in you don't have to be the brain surgeon in the room, but when you hit the hammer or hit the nail with the hammer square, just keep doing it. Keep doing what works. And there's a firm here in town, Morgan & Morgan came to town a couple of years ago. It's called Brown & Crouppen. Great firm, PI firm. And then all of a sudden they had to respond, and they did very cleverly to Morgan & Morgan's ad. Size doesn't always matter. They just came back with great ads that refuted what John Morgan was saying. Both are great firms, but they found a way to differentiate themselves.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, is the answer to just go out of business or just say, "Oh, Morgan & Morgan's here"? So, they're going to be in every market. They're going to be in every market.
I guess you could call John Morgan and say, "Hey, I want to be a Morgan & Morgan firm in town." So, but he may already have that.
That's one way to give up for sure. Just become a Morgan & Morgan affiliate.
Right.
Yeah.
So are there any characteristics that you see among managing partners or decision makers that hire Array that differentiate them from other law firms?
Yes. We're actually going through a rebrand process at the moment. So we've been having a lot of these like workshops and understanding our ideal client. And every client we have is not ideal, right? So it's looking at which ones we enjoy working with, we have the best results and relationship with. For us, it's the entrepreneur, the owner has involvement, wants to understand marketing to an extent, just like you'd want to have an owner have interest in the finances and if they have a CFO like a full time. They still need to understand the numbers. They still need to have them at their fingertips. They still need to make decisions based on them. And same with marketing. So our best clients, are $1 million, $2 million, $3 million plus, but the entrepreneur, the owner, the leadership, and it could be multiple owners, are involved to some degree. We have access to them, and they care. Versus the owners that are passive, they're disconnected. And they want to just kind of separate. Hey, the marketing agency has to do all these things over here. The firm's not responsible for those results. It's very integrated. Again, back to brand, the culture, the positioning, and how that changes over time is important to have that relationship, with leadership. So that's a clear difference, I think, for what's a good client for us. Versus firms that are not a good client for us.
Yeah, I think that resonates 100% with kind of how we are with our clients too. We preach at the beginning of the relationship side of things and how it's a partnership and what we're doing with them. And I'd be curious too on how do you feel like getting buy-in, right, from that owner or whoever it is. And especially you talked earlier a little bit about putting some different operations in place, and do you feel like you typically have that buy-in from owners up front of, we're happy to change the process that we're currently doing, or do you get pushed back a little bit? And how does that kind of play into the next steps that you take?
Yeah, I mean, being an agency, I think where we've been versus where we're at and where we're going is we're pushy, we're proactive, and we're going to lay out what we think you should do. Doesn't mean they always do it, right? But at least it's clear. These are our recommendations, and this is way beyond what you're hired us to do marketing wise. It's your reviews are not coming in at the rate they should be. So what's your review acquisition process? Well, we don't do that. And it's something they have to figure out internally, but we'll give them a template. We'll give them ideas. But if you're not getting reviews, right, then you're not going to gain more traction in local search. That also affects AI search. So things like that where we're pretty vocal about it. and we'll beat them up over and over again about it. And honestly, our good clients, they take that advice and they implement that.
Right.
And some things they say, yeah, that's not going to happen right now because of whatever reason. And that makes sense too. We understand business is complex. If you run on an EOS or some kind of system, you might have a certain amount of goals, rocks or whatever that you can accomplish in a quarter. So, but just noting that it's important. These are things that we think you should be doing, and just kind of working through that and hoping that, we have some traction, because our goal is to have them be successful, not just how do I rank or how many ad clicks did I get. It's a lot deeper than that. So.
Yeah, I liken that to being coachable. If you've ever coached children, or Cagney was an athlete in high school and college, and you can have a kid with all the talent in the world or an attorney that's a superstar, and they don't have to take your advice, but they have to consider it and be coachable. Just like that kid who might not have all the talent, but if you ask him to run over and dive into the fence to catch a ball and he's going to try it, that's a good kid to have on the team. Just like all clients, they make their own decisions, but if they listen and consider our advice, they're coachable and enjoyable to work with. They don't have to do it. It's their business, but being open to considering others' opinions and then making your own decision based on data points, it leads to a good client.
Yeah. And, just like you all, it's, we owe it to them to do that versus just sit back and say, well, they're probably not listening to me, so let me just not say anything.
Yeah.
We have to make it known. And then if we end up parting ways for some reason, there's probably a laundry list of reasons that we can look back on to say, hey, this is why this didn't work out, and maybe why they're probably going to continue to have the same problem with the next partner.
How important is consistent messaging, and does it lead to, I guess you could change it up based on what you're seeing in the results, but can you talk about that process?
Yeah. While we're not a branding company, we actually, we do offer some brand services now, but traditionally we haven't been deep in that side. It's something we've been working to add because of how important I believe it is. And back to even having those workshops and discussions about who are you and who is your best client and customer, and how do we focus on them? So while I think messaging and it can be tweaked, especially for like conversions, what's resonating more, but I think the overall structure of the message of who it's targeted towards and how it represents you and should stay on track with the strategy. As far as tweaking this word or that word, or maybe reorganizing it, I think that's something you should be testing, A/B testing. Just because we can say something that means kind of the same thing in 4 or 5 different ways. So I think you should always be testing and changing things up, as long as you have a consistent, structure. I guess they call it like message and architecture, right? So it's still accomplishing kind of the same thing. Again, focus on your ideal client. That's what every message should be, focused on your ideal client. Everything else is secondary.
And I think in my estimation, it's important to focus not only on your ideal client, but not, especially in your infancy as a firm, not to take work outside of that scope, because it just distracts you from the mission of building the firm that you want to have.
Yeah, that's a tough one because, as you want to niche and focus, and I talk about that all the time. And then say you're a PI attorney, you want to be a PI attorney, but that's contingency, right? So you're not getting paid right away, which is a challenging one. So you could take on some divorce work or estate planning work, or dabble in some other areas very easily. It depends on where you're at, right? If that's just something you have to do to get over the hump. But if you're in a good spot, you're starting a new firm, and you have some money stacked away, you're comfortable for a while, lean all the way in and do not stray from that, because to your point, yes, it's going to distract you. Whether you think it's not, it might be some easy stuff on the side, but it's taken away from your efforts of marketing yourselves, focused on, working with your partners, or, focused on, messaging, getting reviews, just out there talking about what you do and what you're passionate about. So I would say, yeah, if you can stay away from anything outside of that scope, the better.
Yeah. Once you fill up that flywheel with cases, then eventually over the life cycle of those cases, the cash cycle is going to start to turn on. And actually that's where we really excel, both in managing prepaid case cost on the balance sheet and forecasting in a contingent environment. Because with many of our PI clients, we go through what's the life cycle of your cases, where are the milestones that hit, and usually right before a trial sets, there'll be a settlement, right? And so we can predict that cash flow 6, 12, 9 months out and say, okay, here's going to be a dip in 90 days because you've got this big med mal case that's, not really moving, and we might need to hit the line of credit. But at some point, your firm builds up a cash reserve to weather those storms, and you can, through the use of data and forecasting, you can get through those things. Let's shift back to AI real quick.
Yeah.
When you talk to law firm owners, are they afraid of AI? Do they embrace it? I mean, I find there's two camps, and I'm wondering what your experience is with law firm attorneys or owners.
Yeah, I definitely see two camps as well. So, okay, there's two versions of me, right? So you got Kevin, who hosts the Managing Partners podcast. I've had some of the best attorneys in the country on the show, or going to conferences, right? Where a lot of the brightest tend to conjugate to talk and learn. On that side, it's heavy lean in, right? Embracing AI, using it for everything down to intake to managing case management, or the cases themselves, discovery, all those things. So the biggest, brightest firms seem to be really leveraging it to get an advantage and to up their game across the board. Again, everything from intake to client journey to referrals. The majority of my clients tend to be smaller firms, not necessarily smaller firms, but they're still learning. They're still maybe in a sub market in some cases. They're not really exploring it as much. They tend to be a little bit more concerned with using it, concerned if they don't use it. Again, they're leveraging it in some ways, just not as aggressive. And they're definitely, I would say, more are not using it than are. Yeah, more of them are reluctant to use it at this point.
I find that there are two camps of attorneys. One, the civil defense side thinks it's the ruination of the profession, because the insurance companies who are hiring them are going to demand that they push down their prices and time even more because they're utilizing AI. And then you have the other side that thinks it's the greatest thing since the spreadsheet was invented. I mean, in the accounting world, we used to do amortization schedules on green bar paper, and it would, with pencil, because you had to make mistakes and erase things. And now all of a sudden you can do it so much quicker. And with AI, it's just that next wave of technology that's going to help us be more efficient. I want to get to an off the wall question. If you, and don't limit yourself to an attorney, but you've had great guests on your podcast. If you could have a guest on your podcast, dead or alive, not limit yourself to a managing attorney, who would it be and why?
Wow. All right. That's a hard one there. Let's see. Anyone dead or alive? And it would just be fun.
Yep.
I'd have Robin Williams on the show.
Oh my God. That's awesome.
It would be entertaining. That's for sure.
I don't know what we'd talk about, but it would be crazy.
He wouldn't know what you would talk about either, but he would talk for the entire time, and it would be fantastic.
I don't think we could talk about running a law firm at all.
Oh, no. And his protege was Jonathan Winters, but he was fantastic as well. Those old clips of both Robin and Jonathan, they used to be like on the Tonight Show together, and God, they're just so funny off the cuff.
Yeah, and that was a totally off the wall answer, by the way. I was just literally thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to be someone like, boring. It's got to be fun.
Now you're going to spend the rest of your day thinking of somebody else at each hour. Be like, oh, I should have said that one. I should have said that one. I do that often.
I think Robin Williams is a perfect
Robin
answer.
is a good pick, though.
Well, you would expect me to be like John Morgan from Morgan and Morgan, or But honestly, I had more fun.
I would like to meet John at some point, and I'm sure I'll be able to say hi to him at some conference somewhere. But I don't know that I'll ever have him on as a guest. Hopefully, you will.
I don't think it's that hard to get to. We're friends on Facebook. Obviously, I'm sure it's not him necessarily posting everything, but I'm sure you can get him on. I'm sure I can get him on. So reach out to him.
I'm sure his wife, Ultima, runs the show. Hey, Kevin, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining and sharing your insights today. Really enjoyed it. Before we wrap up, if folks want to get a hold of you, how can they get in touch?
Sure. I'm on all social media platforms under Kevin Daisey. That's Daisey. So Instagram, LinkedIn. Feel free to find me there. Shoot me a message. It'll be me that responds. Or you can go to arraydigital.com. Check out our company and the services we offer.
Perfect. Hey, we'll put all that in the show notes. Thank you for joining us today on Judicial Dollars and Cents, where we help law firm leaders make sense of their business decisions and dollars. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. It helps us grow and ensure you never miss an episode. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Cagney.
Thank you.
Cagney, John, thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on Judicial Dollars and Cents, presented by Anders Virtual CFO Services. If you found value in today's conversation, be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcast. To learn more about how Anders helps law firms strengthen their financial foundations and drive growth, visit anderscpa.com. Until next time, keep making smart decisions that make perfect sense.